You are listening to Any Given Sunday, Australia.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Any Given Sunday Australia podcast. The number one podcast in at least 3 households, 1 studio, American Football Australia head office. I had to think about that one for a second. NFL Australia head office. Joining me, as always, in his western wing of his palace at Danny Webb, AGSAU. How are you, mate?
Apparently better than you, mate. You're sounding awfully croaky over there.
I'm glad that you can pick it up. I do have to start with an apology. This year we're going to run with 2 episodes a week, Danny. You know that, I know that. Coming off I played in my football grand final this week. I've got a few people that wanted to mention it, and we won. So I had a big few days, and I pulled up a little bit crook. So we unfortunately didn't get our review episode in. We're going to do a little bit of it today, 2-in-1 kind of thing. But as of next week, it'll be 2 episodes a week, review into preview. But yeah, we're gonna squeeze it all into one today. So I hope, as you can hear from my voice, that your word count is probably going to go up today. I hope you know that.
When is it ever not? I feel like lately it's just been you banging questions at me anyway.
You're all over it more than I am, which is great. But no, we got to see heaps of football. Week 1 was great, especially for yourself. I have to give you the win. Your Birds beating my Packers. I didn't actually get to watch it live. I watched it back later. And the first thing, we're going to do a top 5, which is actually a top 7 things about last week. This is our little review. The first thing we will talk about is an abundance of injuries, mate. Jordan Love, MCL to finish the game, 6 seconds to go. Definitely not ideal for my Packers.
Yeah, but you couldn't really take him out at that point, could you? Because the game was still potentially, could have been on the line. Shocking injury. Could have actually been a lot worse. Everyone was speculating there was an ACL, which is everyone knows it's a minimum full year of recovery for that. It's quite lucky that it's a MCL. They're talking 4 to 6 weeks. I've heard people come out of his camp saying we'll be closer to 3 to 4, that the strain's actually not that bad. But the biggest question for you now is who's going to suit up in quarterback? Are you happy with Malik Willis, or you reckon you go on quarterback hunting?
Well, the word that I've heard is we're going quarterback hunting, but I don't hate Malik Willis. He's a mobile QB. He's the QB of now, of the future kind of thing, the way they want to play. But yeah, look, I think we've got to try him. We brought him in for a reason, and we'll give him a go this week and see what happens. If he does stink it up, then there's a couple of, like Ryan Tannehill has been thrown around. Maybe we just have to throw it out there for a month just to make sure we get Jordan back healthy and not have to rush it. The worst thing we could do is rush it back, as the Dr. Danny, as you know, and then he hurts himself either long term or worse. So look, we'll see how Malik goes. I think we definitely have to start him. I don't think we go hunting yet, but we'll start him and see what happens. Yeah. There's another couple of injuries. The Russell Wilson calf injury. So he had tightness throughout the preseason, and then it kind of reared its head in the last few days before Sunday, Monday, our time. And everyone was kind of speculating that he wasn't going to start, and he hasn't. And it's already this week. They've already said that he's not starting this week, mate. Is it worse than what we think?
Yeah, so I think it was a calf injury rather than tightness, which he then re-aggravated during the preseason. But yeah, everyone was looking forward to Wilson going back to Broncos County to go back to the team that inevitably let him go. But yeah, it's already been confirmed that he's definitely sitting for week 2, and just almost gives Justin Fields a good opportunity to actually prove himself that he wants to be the QB1.
Does it take a little bit of pressure off him as well? Like there's obviously not. We've been speaking about it all off season that there's a QB battle. Well, at the moment it's Justin Fields and Justin Fields only. Although we do have a story that we're going to talk about it soon. But does that take a little bit of pressure off him that he doesn't have him sitting right behind him?
Taking pressure off who? I feel like if anything, it's just going to Fields has got to play and it's got to play well, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But for anything, it's more of a worry for Wilson. The longer he sits out and Fields keeps improving himself, well, if they're winning games, it's hard to go back to someone that's now unproven for the Steelers.
100%, 100%. If he has 4 weeks off and they're 4-0, hard to say, Fieldsy, you're out. So, yeah, definitely an interesting one there. The last one that is the most interesting, it was a very, very late call. for the rest of the world, whether it was in the San Fran 49ers camp, but CMC going out with a calf injury later on, finding out that it's a bit more of an Achilles.
Yeah, so it's actually Achilles tendonitis, which can actually take up to over a month to recover, and it also can keep on rearing its ugly head throughout the season. So it's actually probably a little bit more worrying than what they were letting on. I think there was news earlier, but obviously because of our time zone and stuff, we kind of missed out because it all came out while we were sleeping. But yeah, there was news earlier on that it actually did come out and it was no longer a calf and it was listed as an Achilles, which is a huge, huge worry for all those fantasy owners that have it.
Yeah, fantasy is probably the biggest thing because the 49ers have just unearthed, I think it's Jordan Mason, his name, 28 runs for 150-odd yards and a touchdown. So 49ers are going, you know what, CMC, you just get yourself right. We've got another ready-made, what did you call him last week, a cardboard copy or a cheap version?
Yeah, the cheap knockoff version. Yeah, but I think what the 49ers actually did quite well is they obviously didn't throw away their playbook of what their plan was going up against the Jets. Like, they knew that they were probably going to have quite a fair bit of success on the ground, and they just kept to that. And, yeah, used that RB2 and, absolutely dominated.
He did. He really did. The only thing I think they can kind of maybe hope that he did steal a little bit of time in the preseason. So, he might be 3 or 4 weeks into this month and a half off already. So, could come back a little bit earlier, excuse me. The second story was the woeful QB just talent across the pool this week. So, the average of 209 pass yards per game is the worst since 2010, and that was boosted in the last game, the 49ers and Jets. I know Rodgers only had about 190, but Brock Purdy had well into the 200s, so he boosted up a little bit. Only 2 QBs threw over 300, with Matty Stafford 317 yards and Tua 338. A lot of these young QBs really struggled, mate. So is that a worry going forward?
Well, a lot of these QBs, especially the rookie ones coming in there, starting for the first time, we've always known preseason is not a good prediction of how the season's actually going to go. You're playing against weaker defenses. Teams are trying things out. They're also not showing their full hand. So it's going to be the first time that all these rookie and young, or sometimes young core QBs, are seeing these defensive lineups for the first time, and they're not making the right reads. They're not game ready yet. Just because they might have had a very successful preseason, which, let's talk about Caleb Williams while we're here, might have had a very successful preseason and had hard knocks and had all the hype, but then go out there and absolutely stink it in game one. The only reason that his team won was because of the defense, essentially, and special teams. It's not a good stat to have, and it just kind of shows that, preseason means absolutely nothing.
Williams, I was just looking for my Packers hat. I was going to put it on straight away because he's the one I want to go for. He's had all the hype, and to come out, I think it was 14 of 29 for 83 yards or something. I know they did get the win, but they were down 14 pretty late in that game. Is the hype? I'm hoping, and I really do think the hype is not as much as what it should be.
Yeah, well, I still think there's time to tell. Let's let these young QBs and rookies settle into the actual NFL season. Let's give them a couple of weeks. I always say give them a couple of weeks till week 3, then we can start making some harsh judgment calls.
All right. We'll leave him alone for the moment. One quick thing, just prior to kickoff for the Cowboys versus the Browns, Dak signed a massive $60 million a year deal. We always knew they were going to get into those $60 million. Is it a surprise that Dak was the first one to get there?
No, because I think that was always kind of his plan and the whole reason that there was such a big holdout for it. I think there was an unofficial negotiation point where it's if it's not done before the season, we're not doing it in the season. And Dallas obviously had to at that point be we've got to give him everything because they didn't want to lose him. If he's getting offered a $60 million signing bonus to stay with Dallas as an extension, imagine what he would have been getting offered in the free agency.
Yeah, no, they've done well to actually get the minute. It was literally last minute before he ran onto the field. So, well done to Dak. I don't know. He's done a lot in season, but not a lot postseason. So I'm not sure how many Cowboys fans are actually stoked with the deal. Might have to hit up Loz and see how stoked he is about this deal. But yeah, at least is that the first thing they did in the preseason to actually sign someone?
Well, they signed CD Lamb.
CD Lamb as well, yeah, actually a week ago.
So they're
So
just
they
leaving
left it to
everything.
very late, though.
Yeah, leaving everything very late. But, who knows what's gone through Jerry Rice's head? Let's be honest.
I don't think Jerry knows what's going through Jerry Jones's head. Uh, the fourth one, I don't know if you saw much of this. I've actually seen the footage has come out, which is pretty amazing, of Tyreek Hill being arrested on his way to the ground. But then I love the fact, and the video is amazing. Like, go find it on X of what they always say. I don't want to say police brutality, but he was definitely a little bit,
Manhandled.
over the top. But then Tyreek comes out, 7 catches, 130 yards, and a TD, and the best celebration of the year.
Yeah, so good on Tyreek for the way that he absolutely turned that around. Like, from the video that we saw, it's not good what the police necessarily did to him, especially for something so simple as him not wanting to wind down his window. And that would have been just because of who he is. And there were so many cars driving past. He doesn't want to end up on TMZ or anything for, getting arrested before the game. So he was probably doing it just to protect his own identity. But yeah, there was definitely one cop that let the power go to his head and went back and even went at his teammate who pulled over and went after him as well. The cop whose body cam, I think, was the only one who was probably actually being quite just in the whole thing. But yeah, for then Tyreek to go out, get that touchdown, and sit there with the handcuff symbols behind his back, and was it Waddle who came up?
Yeah, Waddle came over and arrested
fake
him.
arrested him. That was perfect. It's it. That's celebrations. Everyone might as well just not celebrate for the rest of the year because that's always going to be number one.
I know he got arrested 3 hours before the game, but I never heard. I'd love to find out what the actual process was after that because he was on the phone. I think it was to his agent saying, "I bet you could hear him. I'm being arrested. I'm being arrested." But was he in custody for an hour and then shipped off to the game? Or was he released straight away? Do you know any more?
Well, I think the charges that he was meant to be getting put up for was for not wearing his seatbelt and then not listening to a direct order or something by the police. So whatever it was, he was never going to be detained for it. It should have been a ticket at the very least, and then that
the very most it should have been.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. At the very most should have just been a ticket and a fine. Kids wear your seatbelts, always wear your seatbelts, and then he should have drove off to the game. So I think the fact that he actually got put in handcuffs, we don't know the whole story. It could have actually got sorted on the side of the road. Who knows?
Yeah, the cop just maybe had a bad day. The story we kind of alluded to there, number 5, the Steelers, they're the top of the AFC North without scoring an offensive touchdown, mate.
Yeah, that is as soon as this happened, it was one of the first things I sent to you. I just I can't believe it. Yeah, how do you? The only reason the Steelers won was because they won using field goals. Mind you, Fields actually played relatively well. He went 17-23, 156 yards, another 57 yards on the ground. Most importantly for him, though, 0 turnovers. But we probably need to look more at what else was happening in the AFC North. The Bengals clearly need help in the wide receiver. The Browns have a massive question mark surrounding the QB. And as we said in the preview episode, I reckon the Ravens will bounce back from that. It was quite a close contested game, so I'm not really too worried about the Ravens. But yeah, for the Steelers fans, well, it's been a while since you've been at the top, so enjoy it while you got it.
Well, the Ravens were a big toe away from actually stealing that game, which was your any given Sunday pick of the week. So you were a couple of white cleats away from getting the W, mate.
Yeah, and that's why it was my any given Sunday. Could have happened. Could have happened.
The Browns, how about Deshaun? There's obviously some news coming out that he's might be indicted again, which I don't want to get into, but they are an absolute rabble at the moment, and Deshaun Watson is definitely not helping himself. Then to turn around and see Baker Mayfield doing so well, the guy they got rid of who had won their last postseason game, it's got to sting a little bit.
Yeah, so Baker Mayfield, which we'll get to later in our preview, I think is playing. So he's finally playing the form that everyone thought and wanted him to play in. But yeah, for the Browns to move on from him, spend so much guaranteed money on Deshaun Watson, they're hurting. They have to be hurting. And it's going to be so much harder for them to move on from Deshaun Watson when there's just guaranteed money sitting there and there's nothing they can do about it.
So that's what that was the only thing about the possible arrest or whatever. I haven't looked into it too much. That because it's not in the last 2 seasons, it might be a way for them to get out of the guaranteed contract. So just keep your eyes on that one, Danny boy. Number 6, Daniel Jones. ever since he signed his contract of, $140 million over 3 years, has thrown more pick sixes than touchdown passes. Outrageous kind of stats.
Well, I said at the preview episode about the Giants that they're going to be the worst team in the league, and they went out and proved me right, which is great. So New York fans, at me again. Like, I'm ready for you to hit me up on X. But yeah, that is a terrible, terrible stat. We said at the time it probably wasn't a smart contract. He's hoodwinked them, pulled the wool over their eyes. There was a news report that actually came out that's like Daniel Jones has been announced as the starter in week 2 for the Giants. That shouldn't come out about your $140 million QB.
No, you're right. That's the fact that it's probably a surprise. There was players that they hung around after the game to boo him as he left the stadium. There was, some of the things that are coming out about that whole thing is ridiculous. And Daniel Jones, you were right. I had the Broncos as being the worst, and they didn't really show out, but they've got some promise. Bo Nix had 45 pass attempts. Like, that's crazy for a rookie QB. Daniel Jones is on a very slippery slope, and he's not getting his way out of it anytime soon, I don't think. I did see you went to the Germany game, over there, and it was a Chiefs versus who was
Dolphins.
it? What a cracking game. This year's Germany game, Giants versus Carolina.
Yeah, so to be fair, Carolina, with their performance as well, could also be knocking on the door of the worst team in the league. And they should be very thankful that they've got their first-round draft pick this year.
Yeah, where the Giants do not have a first-round draft pick. So, ouch. All right, mate, let's get on to this week. We've spent enough time on last week, and that was my fault, and I do apologise again. But this week, we've got a couple of cracking games we're going to talk about. First one's the Friday game. Bills at Dolphins. A game... I think this is game of the week. I don't know about you, but this is 100% game of the week. Early line is Dolphins 2.5, mate. Is it, or minus 2.5? Only because they're at home? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, which is actually quite interesting because there's a fair bit of news that has come out, but the line hasn't changed with it. So both the running backs for the Dolphins, Achan and Moset, both didn't practice was listed as didn't practice, dealing with like an ankle injury and a chest injury. Very interesting, like, because that's their 1-2 punch in the running back room for the Dolphins to be favoured. I guess because it's coming up probably against a weakened defense in the Bills, and it is at home. It is in Florida, which incredibly helps Tua's opportunities because everyone knows he doesn't like playing in the cold.
Is there anything on the other side from the injury front?
Yeah, so Josh Allen was actually seen and interviewed about it. He's training with a left glove on, and he said, well, it's far away from my heart, and it's not my right hand, or something along those lines, which is very true. It's not really going to stop his throwing. The only thing that you might be slightly worried for is, catching the snap and stuff like that, but in practice didn't seem to be a worry at all. But the bigger worry is they are playing without their cornerback, who's already been listed as out, Tyron Johnson, who, has been almost listed as a CB1.
That is huge, especially so I've got a couple of stats that I found. Joshy Allen against the Dolphins, he loves playing against the Dolphins. He's 11-2 in his 13 times playing against the Dolphins. In those 13 games, he's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in those games. But on the other side, Tua's 1-6 against the Bills. So a lot of those times would have been in the snow, which we know he doesn't like the snow. So, like you said, playing in Florida, a bit warmer weather. But Tyreek Hill, who's had 16 100-yard plus games, or 100-plus yard games, since joining the Dolphins in 2022. That's the most amongst any wide receiver group. But he's had 0 against the Bills in 5 attempts. Losing Tyron Johnson, very, very interesting who's going to line up against that. And, possibly the running back room a little bit down. I'm thinking Waddle and Hill could be lighting it up this week.
Absolutely. I reckon this is the week that Hill is going to break that streak about having 0 out of 0 from 5 for the 100-plus yards. I reckon, especially after he played last week, there's a lot of hype, but there's still a lot of talk about the whole arrest issue, which we spoke about earlier. I think he's just going to go out there and just try and absolutely dominate and, turn those Jets on that he's got.
Do you want to pick who you reckon that is going to get the job done, mate?
Yeah, I'm tipping that the Dolphins probably are, just with the Bills being slightly banged up. I know so the Dolphins in the running back room, but with the way that Tua managed to still get the job done in the air last week, I'm probably leaning towards the Dolphins.
Yeah, I don't hate that, but just for the sake of it, 11-2 against the Dolphins. Alan does love playing it, and I'm sure he'll appreciate the warmer weather. The only thing that really worries me is the lack of wide receivers. So if he can overcome that, maybe a rushing touchdown or two from himself, maybe Dolphins win but don't cover. Close game.
I think the first line that came out earlier in the week actually had the Dolphins at like 0.5. So it was literally only giving him 1 point. So it's almost a flip of a coin sort of game. The fact that it's blown out to 2.5.
It's the left hand. It's the left hand glove. No one likes it.
Yeah, there's just probably to do a lot with this whole injury report that is coming out from the Bills.
The second game I'm going to talk about, and I think this is the pick of the Sunday games, the Bucks at Lions, and really surprised the Lions. Fair enough that the Lions are at home, but the Bucks are coming off some great form in week one. -6.5, the line. That's huge.
I think that is huge, especially with the way Baker Mayfield was playing. I alluded to it earlier, but he's probably playing the best that he's played in his career. So last year, we all said that, Bucks have finally found their home. Bucks have finally found their QB since moving on from Brady. Baker Mayfield's finally found a home in Tampa, signed that big deal. The Bucks defense is still looking as dominant as ever. Mike Evans got 2 touchdowns passes in week one. They're looking good.
Yeah, I agree. And I know everyone goes, they played the Commanders. The Commanders' defense is their strength. So the fact that they were still able to tear them apart, 4 touchdowns from Baker, leading all QBs at the moment. He was one of the guys, he didn't get over 300, but he was a QB that did, I think it was 285 or something like that. Only missed, I think he was 24 from 30. So, great conversion rate. I actually really like the Bucks in this game, and 6.5, that's easy money for me. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown had a bit of a quieter one against the Rams. How do they get him involved a bit more, mate?
I think they just need to get him involved earlier. I think he had a couple, maybe a pass early on, but yeah, they definitely need to get him involved earlier. Probably look at Sammy Laporta as a receiver again, like how he was so dominant last year, and just actually settle into the game. They had to have such a big comeback against the Rams. Did they go down 17 points? I think maybe.
Yeah, 14 or 17. They were down definitely early.
Which is huge, and it was great for them to get the comeback win against the Rams, but they probably shouldn't have been in that position in the first place.
And the fact that it had to go into overtime, how much of a problem is that?
Well, once they were in overtime as well, they kind of just ground and pounded it. They just played some dirty, grit and grind sort of football to get that ball up the field, which when you've got Montgomery and Gibbs to rely upon, right, it's pretty easy decision, especially when you don't want to turn over the ball. Could it have been done earlier? Did it have to go to overtime? Probably not. It probably should have got done earlier. So the Lions actually have a fair bit to work on to be 6.5 favourites, but they are playing in Detroit.
And Stafford really kind of had his way. He was, over 300 yards. Cooper Kupp, 110 yards. So that, Evans and Godwin kind of duo, and like we said, Baker starting off on fire. So, it could be a high scoring kind of game as well.
Yeah. So both, the only difference is I think the Bucks defense were looking pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. They did. I think they held the Commanders to maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns, a couple of field goals, but like we said, the Commanders, their strength is the defensive side of the ball. So the fact that they scored over 30, so I think this is a really interesting game, mate. I'm going to get you to pick it. I'm not going to pick it just yet, and we'll see in a minute why. But who do you reckon? Especially at 6.5. What are your thoughts?
Oh, picking against the spread, you almost got to give it to the Bucks if we're going against the spread. I think it's just too tight. The Lions probably had the bigger growth from last week, but if the Bucks can keep it the same level, it's hard to not give them that in the line.
Yeah. So definitely, I agree. But in Detroit. That has to be the only reason it's so high. But yeah, it's not that far from, where is it? Florida now up to Detroit, is it? A couple of things. sorry. A couple of things to worry about this week. I put this one in. Williams versus Stroud. And the only reason I'm very interested in this game, it's actually Sunday night game. So a huge first, primetime game for Williams. And coming out, and he said in his post game, I'm not worried about stats. You were down 14 points, mate, and you played pretty shit ass with all the weapons that you have. I felt sorry for all the fantasy people that had Keenan Allen and all those guys that had 10 yards. You have to be worried about stats at some point, Danny. So I reckon Williams versus Stroud. I don't know what the line is, but I'd be pounding that line. I reckon Stroud is going to come out, and the Houston Texans are going to absolutely dominate this week.
Yeah, so the Houston Texans are just a great team. They picked up Stephon Diggs, and I said if he buys in, he'll be incredible. And that's exactly what he was. And also picking up Joe Mixon as well. They looks like a complete team.
Yeah.
Where we just said that the Bears barely survived that game. And if it wasn't for the defense and special teams, they wouldn't have actually had that win. It's going to go down as his stat. I think he's the first QB number one draft since whenever it was, 2002 or something silly like that, to go out and win. But I wouldn't want that stat. And it's good that he doesn't want to talk about stats, because other people will bring that up and say that he probably doesn't deserve it. The line is actually at 6.5, obviously towards the Texans.
Yeah, pound that. Absolutely. The overs. It'll be 6.5, but it'll be $1.60. Yeah, that's 6.5, I reckon, overs. The other thing to watch this week, we've got a mountain of teams. Like we said, a lot of QBs didn't play their best. A lot of senior, older QBs didn't play their best. The kind of rebounding, we spoke about the Browns against the Cowboys, had an absolute shocker. But a couple that we spoke about last week, the Bengals and the Jets, we had the Bengals winning by 100. Actually got done. Joey B didn't have a great day. And the Jets, I know a lot of people have come out and said the Jets lost in San Fran. They probably shouldn't have. But after that first quarter and that first drive, they really did look, a little bit insipid and didn't really put together many plays. Besides, they went 65 yards or 85 yards or something in one series, and then it was only 185 yards for the rest of the game. The Jets, I think, have a pretty big rebounding weekend too.
Yeah, so you take away that long bomb on that, free play that Aaron Rodgers is also always so good at. You take away that long bomb to Alan Lazard, which results in a touchdown. You take that away, there wasn't really that many positives to look for. Especially if you're a Jets fan, I would be somewhat worried. I think they're lucky that they're going up against the Titans.
Yeah,
Hopefully it's a good way for them to have a bounce back game. They need a win. They can't go 0-2 to start the season, not with Aaron Rodgers back. And, you still got your weapons. You still got Garrett Wilson. Brees all played a very good game. And then, the defense is still looking strong. You really, really can't go up against Tennessee and then get them out.
And how worried are the Bengals after a loss to the Patriots like that, mate?
So the Bengals' issue is their wide receiver room, and they need to get some contracts signed to, bring some people back. The offense just really didn't look like it had it going. Joey B, they've already come out and said, he actually wasn't 100%. There was this, and that. The Bengals are just coming out with all sorts of excuses left, right, and center. You just didn't play well. It's just a matter of fact. They just didn't play well. And now they're going up against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Not a good look, and they're probably going to start 0-2.
Yeah, and I agree with Jamar Chase. Even though he hasn't signed his contract and he hasn't been at training, hasn't trained, only had 5 targets. He's your number one. You got to get him the ball in his hand, and he's not going to get any better until he gets on the training paddock. So a lot of problems at the Bengals that have kind of been hidden away these, all the preseason, but now it's out there and everyone's going, actually, holy shit! Maybe the Bengals have a few dramas to worry about.
Absolutely, I think they do, and I don't think this is the week they're going to be able to prove it. Unlike the Jets, where they're going up against the easy opponents, you're going up against the reigning Super Bowl champs. They want a three-peat. They want to probably get that number one seed as well, so they don't have to play an extra playoff game. They're going out there and going to want to dominate.
Last one quickly before we move on to our betting. The fact that they're playing the Chiefs, does that take a little bit of pressure on them? Because no one's going to be expecting them to win now.
Well, they need to win. They can't start the season 0-2. They should be starting the season 1-1. They should have beat Pittsburgh, but they didn't. So I don't think it takes any pressure off. I think if anything, playing the Chiefs makes it harder.
Yeah. It was the Patriots, not Pittsburgh, but you're right. They are
peas. It's the peas.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a good point. And realistically, if they had to come out and beat the Patriots, everyone's going, "How good's this game going to be?" But now it's looking very one-sided, which sucks a little bit. All right, our any given Sunday bet of the week. You picked the Ravens last week, didn't get up, so it comes to me. And I didn't bet on the Bucks game before because I didn't pick the Bucks game before because I don't hate this game for betting. The Bucks are paying $3.60 now. Being the underdog, I was thinking it'll be mid-twos or something like that. But as soon as I opened it up and saw $3.60, I was like, I don't hate this one. So I'm picking them as my any given Sunday bet of the week. If you don't like them at $3.60, you could take the line plus 6.5. That's still $2. So if you want that little bit of a one touchdown safety, the Bucks at plus 6.5 for $2. I don't hate it all. Our bet that we put together last week, we missed by one leg.
Classic us.
One bloody leg, which is a pretty standard operation. We did put one on, which you can find in our feed. Just follow Any Given Sunday AU podcast. Put one on your Birds and my Packers, which got up. Paid $7 or $8. So make sure you do get around us. We do have a little bit of an idea of what we're doing. But let's quickly, just before we finish, mate, let's put one on for this Friday. We're hoping, it's not out there yet, but we're hoping it's a free swing. We'll see what happens. What are your thoughts about this game, mate? We've already kind of talked about it. It looks like it's going to be, I'll grab my phone out so we can build it. Possibly Miami kind of, high wide receiver kind of game. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so I think with the cornerback going down, the cornerback for the Bills going down, both running backs for the Dolphins being question marks at this point, you're going to have to jump on Hill and Waddle. I know we said that Hill hasn't hit that 100-yard mark, so maybe we'll drop it down to 80, and I actually quite like Waddle for the same.
Well, they both hit over 100 last week, so Tyreek and Waddle. And Waddle's quite juicy for 82, so we'll put them in. The fact that they're both going for 80, do we kind of think Tua for a few yards?
Yeah, you're going to have to hit Tua probably above the 250 mark because, they're taking up 160 of those yards and he still has other options out there.
We've got 225 of an option, but it's not really boosting us up much. So plus 250, we can chuck him in. We're going to get something on the Bills side where we're worried about the wide receiver market that they've got. So you brought up before about Josh Allen's rushing.
Yeah, so I potentially was looking at him for a rushing touchdown, but with his sore left hand, is he going to want to be pushing through a pack for a touchdown and getting squished? Maybe not. But he does love to move on his feet and he loves a scramble play. So let's look at him for some form of rushing yards.
Well, his over is 38.5.
Let's play it safe. Let's play it safe and let's go 25.
We can get him at 25. All right. I reckon that's already 4 legs at $6.
Perfect, mate. Load it up.
I reckon leave it at that. It's a pretty safe kind of bet. I reckon they're all pretty safe. For $6, that's a pretty safe one, I reckon. So we don't even need the free swing Friday because we've got a pretty safe one at $6. So make sure it's already up. I just posted it. You can find it Any Given Sunday AU podcast on the Sportsbet feed. Danny, it's going to be a good week. My Packers coming out against the Colts, we're underdogs. I'll be throwing a couple of dollars towards the underdogs, I reckon, in that one. I don't know about your Birds. Your Birds are the Monday night game, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a Monday night against the Falcons, which we didn't even touch on the whole Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix drama, but I'm sure we'll get to that as the season progresses. Yeah,
I reckon we'll have our review before that game, so we might be able to actually talk about that game then. But have a great weekend, mate. Enjoy the football. Football's back. We love it. I'll see you next week.
See you then.